Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, I'm going to start a little bit early today. Shoot, it's been like 2 weeks since I've done this. Let me see how I could. Oh, here you go. Perfect. All right. There we go. Awesome. Okay, cool. So, we'll wait a little bit to get started and then we'll rock and roll from there. We'll be doing a live today on why people stay sick their entire life and what kind of keeps them in that loop. And then, of course, I'll be able to answer any questions you guys may have and then stuff of that sort. So we'll wait a little bit. I got today my traditional drink. Today it happens to be some good organic coffee that my dad made in glass all the time, never plastic, which is a habit that I would recommend anyone start adopting simply because it's an easy way to decrease your exposure to various chemicals like xenoestrogens, et cetera, et cetera. Also, a lot of these microplastics, and there are like billions of them in every cup, get deposited in your arteries. So help contribute to that plaque, which increases your chance of having possibly a stroke or a heart attack as well. So just like an easy thing, literally anyone can do. Just make sure, especially out of hot liquids, make sure you're drinking them out of glass or maybe food grade stainless steel. And the same thing with your Tupperware. Just make sure if you're heating up your food, it's in glass. If you're storing your food, it's in glass. The container or the lid could be glass too. That one's not super necessary. But just as long as the body of the container is definitely glass, that would help, okay? So, okay, we'll give it about a minute or so. And you guys, let me know how your weekend has gone. I saw Mickey, I think 17 or Mickey 16. I forgot exactly. I forgot the actor's name. I think he's really good, actually. He played like in the Twilight series, but also the new Batman movie, which I liked. And it was pretty good if you're into sci-fi movies. I don't think it's like the best sci-fi movie ever, but it's actually kind of pretty entertaining and kind of keeps you in the loop. I'm pretty sure it's still out in theaters as well. I think Mickey 16 or 17. I forgot the exact number, maybe 18. Pretty good. So highly recommended. Okay, so let's go ahead and rock and roll, and we'll go from there. So you guys, I know a lot of fitness stuff online. It's all about, how can you do the bench press and what fancy, vitamin C or vitamin supplement you need to take. But honestly, you guys, that stuff is so unimportant in the grand scheme of things, especially with the level of kind of pathology and unsustainability a lot of Americans are living with these days. That barely scratches the surface of what they really need to focus on, because a lot of people in America, especially like right now, I say this often, like 2025, and Americans are literally mentally and physically the sickest humans in the history of the entire human race. And trust me, it's not because they don't know how to bench press or how to stack their isolated vitamins and minerals, or how to do fasting or keto. You know what I mean? Ooh. If all those little things were so important, there's a gargantuous amount of information already out and has been out since basically like the 1970s. Everyone would be fixed by now, but it's not the case, okay? And that stuff is just super, super surface level stuff that needs to be mastered when like a tremendous amount of other variables are accounted for in a person's health and wellness journey. Because again, it's like, dude, if a person's consistently struggling with reoccurring weight challenges or reoccurring health challenges, it's not because they don't know how to do an incline bench correctly. It's not because they're not taking the right supplements, okay? Inevitably, the foundation to their entire health pyramid is completely broken. And without fixing that, all these little like how to exercise properly, how to move properly, yes, they're important in the grand scheme of things, but important as like a last thing to focus on. As the foundation is built, it's like, to give you guys an example, if your foundation is broken, if you build like an amazing house on top of it, it wouldn't matter. The house will crumble eventually anyways. And that's exactly what people are trying to do, which is why nobody is getting better. And literally even all our health professionals are actually very sick themselves. Very Go to any health convention, literally any health convention. I just went to a few. I've been here in Vegas, and it's easy to go to conventions. Go to any health convention, And 90% of the health professionals you see there are like very overweight, on a bunch of medical drugs themselves, have all these orthopedic and skin issues, et cetera, et cetera. So even our health professions, a complete disaster, you know? Even they can't even figure out how to live sustainably and like human beings, but somehow they're going to communicate this to their patients, and miraculously it's going to work. Obviously it's not working. It's never going to work, you know? So here's some things. Once again, there is no hierarchy of importance, but here are a bunch of things that keep people stuck in the loop of being sick and chasing one symptom after another, basically their whole life. Or, you know, the symptom of excess weight gain is also a health symptom, but struggling with kind of recurring weight gain issues. You know, you lose the weight, you gain the weight, you lose the weight, you gain the weight, and this happens back and back, and people still remain very sick at the physical and emotional level and mental level as well. So, okay, so first and foremost, what keeps people stuck in being sick is, I feel they're just not I feel, it's objectively true. There's just severe lack of proper health education in the US, like severe lack of proper health education. I mean, I can't tell you, I've been doing this professionally for like 20 years and have been in the field for like 40 years total. And I can't tell you the gargantuous amount of people I run into with a myriad of health issues that say like, oh yeah, I eat healthy and I work out and stuff of this sort. Look, like the reality is I've never seen a healthy and happy person need medical drugs and be overweight. Okay, so clearly like whatever is happening in their education system is not working, or they wouldn't be struggling with these health challenges and stuff of that sort. So there is a severe lack of health education, and also severe conscious awareness of that lack of education. Like a lot of people think like a proper diet is some fad diet, you know, like keto or fasting, like that's meant to solve anything. And there's a strategic place and time for all of these things. But the thing, even with nutrition protocols, what a lot of people don't realize is it needs to be specifically customized to the person's needs, their metabolic health, their goals, their digestive health, et cetera, et cetera. All of those need to be customized for the person's particular needs. And there is no perfect diet. There isn't. And there will never be. The perfect diet is one that's built specifically for you. So a lot of times when I hear people say like, oh, I eat healthy, like first of all, I take a look at them and I see they have like very aged skin 99% of the time. They're struggling with some kind of aesthetic challenge like a belly or, you know, excess body fat, or they're struggling with some health issue, you know, like some easy chronic health issue like high blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera. And I ask them, okay, so what is healthy eating for you? And they would say something like, oh, like I do fasting, or I do keto, or I eat less, or something like this. So this is already an indication that they just don't know like what they're doing, and unfortunately they're not consciously aware enough that it is not the right way of doing things. You know what I mean? Which is why they continue to struggle with their weight challenges. And sometimes, you know, unfortunately too, they have glimpses of success, kind of like they lose a few pounds here and there. But they really don't know the mechanisms behind why they lost it. It's just they happen to go on this diet, and a lot of times they're not meeting the problem at the level of the problem anyways, especially people with struggling with weight challenges, and they just regain it literally almost every time, you know what I mean? And stuff of that sort. And it's the same with fitness and health. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, what do you do for fitness? You know, you have like an overweight person that lacks severe muscle mass, and they're like, oh, I do a lot of cardio and high intensity training. Okay, well, you know, that's obviously not going to work for them long term. It might get them to lose a few pounds here and there, but first of all, like they're probably fairly overweight. So, and they're most likely doing their cardio on either like a treadmill or like running on concrete outside, etc., which is going to be terrible for their lower extremities, their knees, their ankles, their hips in particular, etc., etc. And on top of that, they're most likely very high cortisol individuals. They're already operating on a very high burned out state. et cetera, and doing a lot of high cortisol activities like long distance cardio or high intensity training just kind of puts them in more of a burned out state. Thus, they lose even more muscle, although they may lose body fat at the same time. But the problem is once that happens, they kind of cornered themselves into a corner metabolically at the end of their journey. Basically, they probably have some kind of wear and tear on their joints for sure, but also now they have to eat like super low calorie diets just to be able to maintain their lean physique, which never happens, et cetera, et cetera. So, and there's still people that believe like, dude, it's 2025 and there's still, I run into a gargantuous amount of people that still really honestly believe that they can kind of medically drug themselves or supplement themselves into good looks or health and happiness. And it never happens, you guys. Come on, it's 2025, and I can't believe how gullible a lot of people are still, like adults, you know, in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I recently spoke to a 70-year-old guy that was in the health profession for like 20, 30 years, I believe. And he's still like on a bunch of medical drugs and still like very overweight, et cetera, you know? So it doesn't work, guys. And if it worked, if all those quick fixes worked, like my friend Martin would say, we would all be fixed. Martin Ryan would say we would all be fixed by now, you know, and we're not. It's 2025. And like I said, Americans are mentally and physically the sickest humans in all of human history, including the health profession, the health professionals here. And I'm laughing, guys, but it's so sad, you know, it's just so sad to see, because inevitably if people just live like human beings again and live sustainably, we wouldn't be having literally almost any of these problems. So that's one thing, lack of education, okay? Lack of education, and also a lack of conscious awareness of that there is a severe lack of education. And that goes hand in hand with a few other things that I'll be mentioning here. So another thing a lot of people do wrong that keep them stuck in a normalized state of pathology is inevitably they don't listen to their body's many cries for help. And your body basically communicates with you. One way it communicates with you is through pain, you know? So when you have excess weight challenges, you know, your body is telling you something. It's telling you a lot, you know? If you have high blood pressure or hypertension, you know, it's clinically referred to, you have too much tension, you know, your body's giving you signals. If you have low back pain, your body's, again, telling you that something's not working and you need to stop doing whatever it is that you are doing, and maybe stop doing it completely or do it differently, some other way, some more sustainable way, et cetera, et cetera. But Americans unfortunately fall into the habit of like, okay, I have high blood pressure. I'm not going to use this as a learning experience to change the behaviors that are leading to the high blood pressure, maybe get a new job, maybe transfer to a different position in my job because of the nagging coworker or boss that is causing my high blood pressure to go through the roof. Instead of listening to all these cries for help and using them as a reflection to change and live more sustainably, people are like, I'm going to keep doing this pattern. In a sense, I'm going to keep a rock in my shoe that is causing me pain, but instead of taking the rock out, I'm going to take painkillers instead. Now, that sounds super stupid, right? Anyone would agree, but that is exactly what American adults are doing all the time. I have high blood pressure, I'm going to take blood pressure medication and blame it on my genetics, you know? Although in 20 years of practice, I've never seen a person's blood pressure not normalize once they started taking the rock out of their shoe, and AKA changing the person that's causing the disease. You know, I have excess weight challenges. Oh, I'm going to take Ozempic. You know, I'm not going to pay attention to the fact that I'm an emotional eater. I have a stressful job that's causing me to stress eat maybe, or a stressful relationship, or a poor relationship with food, or a poor relationship with your internal self, such as maybe I have a harsh internal critic, you know, that I merge with and listen to too often, and it's causing a lot of micro stress to my central nervous system, and then thus causing me to stress eat and guilt eat or something of that sort. You know, instead of changing that, inevitably changing all of that would actually gargantuously improve the person's quality of life. And it is more difficult, you know, but that is inevitably what needs to happen to create real change in a person, Because if they don't, they're just going to be chasing one symptom after another, after another, after another, their whole entire life, which is amazing money for medical health professionals. And for patients like that in the health field, they're referred to as 401k clients. I got this phrase from Paul Chek, but I've heard it many times in different circles. They're 401k clients because they literally never get better, but they stay alive long enough to keep coming back and getting treatment. So you basically put them on your retirement plan as a healthcare professional, or your BMW fund. They fund your BMW, you know. But unfortunately, just the people never get better. And you totally see this. They look completely destroyed by the time they're 40 or 50. And they're still relying on all these drugs and stuff of that sort. And it's like, dude, it doesn't work. You know, even the same with, you know, antidepressants, or, you know, when you have depression, you know, your body is telling you that there's some kind of possibly disconnect in your core values between reality and what you perceive that you want in your life. And something of that sort, you know. So instead of closing the gap and focusing on that, people take antidepressants, you know, and wonder why they never get better. Even if something as minor as coffee, you know, like I'm drinking coffee here. But when you're tired, it's your body's way of telling you you need to rest, not grind it out, not have more coffee. It's your body's way of telling you need to rest. And if you're chronically tired, then that is also your body telling you like, hey, maybe I'm not sleeping well, you know, between the hours, particularly of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. or something around there, because your body typically repairs itself physically from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and mentally from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So maybe I'm not optimizing my sleep there. Or maybe I'm getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom more often than I would like. So maybe I need to stop drinking fluids as often earlier in the day. Or maybe I'm in a heightened alert state. So maybe I have some kind of chronic stress that I'm dealing with and it's causing me to not feel rested while I sleep. Anyways, all of these things are your body telling you like, hey, you need to attend to these things and you need to fix them if you want to look your best and if you want to feel your best, you know. And there's no way in hell you're ever going to medically drug yourself into health and happiness. If it would have worked, I mean, Americans right now are the most medically drugged out humans in all of human history and still the most obese, miserable, and diseased humans ever, you know. So clearly something's not working, guys, and it's kind of silly to presume what hasn't worked already for 40 years is all of a sudden going to work. You know, that's just crazy talk. You know what I mean? I don't know what to say about that. So there's not much more elaboration needed. So those are two things, you know. So again, the first thing is lack of education. The second thing is they don't listen to the pain teacher. They just keep taking, they have a symptom, they take medical drugs, have another symptom, take medical drugs. But all these signals and pain teachers are really kind of your body telling you if you need to look deeper because something's not working and you need to kind of fix it at the right level, basically. Okay. Another issue of what keeps people stuck is inevitably they continue to stay in the same environment. So, for example, like a person would, and that's presuming the problem is that the environment, everyone is going to be different here. But a lot of times I see people that don't create lasting changes because they do, like, for example, a fat loss program, et cetera, and then they continue to stay in the same environment where their problems actually originated from. You know, and this is sometimes the equivalent of, although this is a slightly exaggerated example, sometimes the equivalent of like a person going through a drug rehab program. You don't even need to be a PhD in psychology to understand this. And the person successfully finishes this drug rehab, but then they return to the neighborhood where their druggie friends are and the drug dealer is at the corner, you know, probably unemployed at that point as well. So they have a lot of, unfortunately, free time in that situation to continue to hang out with these people. And you don't need to be a PhD in psychology to realize that this person most likely is going to relapse, you know. And relapse rate after drug rehab programs are quite high all the time. So, and one of the reasons for that is they continue to stay in the same environment, the same work, et cetera, where all those problems originated from, you know. So a person finishes the fat loss program, but they stay at the job they hate. or they stay in the relationship that's not right for them, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, this isn't like the environment isn't like the only variable to focus on, because there is an internal environment component that interacts with that external environment. As the saying goes, like wherever you go, there you are, right? So it's important to be very conscious of and aware of if you are causing your own problems, because then changing the environment may not work, because you will replicate those problems in the new environment anyways. But sometimes it is the case where the person just needs to change their job environment, and I've seen a lot of people heal quite quickly, and oftentimes they, like for example, with weight loss challenges, with weight loss journeys, 90% of people regain all of their weight within 2 to 3 years. And that's mainly, it doesn't work. There's rather such a huge relapse rate, mainly because people really honestly think all they need to do is just change their diet, or work out more, or take some fat loss drug, which is a failure approach. They will fail because inevitably they're trying to meet most oftentimes problems that are at the thinking and emotional dimension at a biological level, which never works. Every system is interconnected for sure, but there should be more emphasis on certain levels than others during specific portions of the journey, So inevitably, people that struggle with especially reoccurring weight challenges, I kind of call like they have some kind of mind virus in them that is leading to particular behaviors over long periods of time that lead to weight challenges, which inevitably lead to metabolic health issues such as high blood pressure, high resting blood glucose levels, high triglycerides, low testosterone, poor HDL levels, maybe if you're concerned with LDL, very, very high LDL levels as well, et cetera, et cetera. So various metabolic and aesthetic issues, okay? And stuff of that sort. So just know it's like, if it sounds too good to be true, it's because it is, and that's what quick fixes are. Please don't fall victim to this silliness. Again, I'm going to repeat this over and over again because it's so important, but if all these quick fixes worked, we would all be fixed by now. But Americans are literally the sickest humans in the history of the human race as of 2025. I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not joking either. Go to pubmed.gov, all the stats are there. You can even check it for yourself if you don't believe me. In fact, like I say often, if you don't even care enough for numbers, dude, we're on the weekend. Go outside literally anywhere, wherever you are in America, and 9 out of 10 people you run into are clearly overweight or obese. And don't even know it oftentimes. Don't even consciously perceive that there's something wrong, which indicates the normalization of mental and physical pathology in our culture. And I think like last time I read the stats, it's been a little while, close to like 40% of Americans, 30% are on some type of psychiatric medication. And those are the ones that have the money to get diagnosed. So which is the scary part. So I would say realistically, it's more like 50 or 60%. And then about 80% of Americans are on some type of medical drug altogether. Again, I've never seen happy and healthy people be overweight on needing medical drugs ever. Like ever. So as a healthcare professionals, we need to focus on getting people to live like human beings again, because inevitably biology hasn't changed in over 200,000 years, since the Homo sapien came around. And there's certain set rules that you need to follow. And if those rules aren't followed, the biology and psychology of the human being begins to break down. Okay. So the next thing is friends and family. This kind of goes in hand with the environment. But a lot of times the one issue that causes a lot of people to stay very sick and have various weight challenges their whole entire life is simply they continue to hang out with friends and family that predominantly also have weight and various metabolic health issues as well. And even if they manage to lose weight, but they continue to hang out with this circle of people, their chances of relapsing are much higher. I'm not saying it's 100% likely. I'm just saying it's just another thing that adds to the chance of relapse, because your friends are inevitably, if they're very overweight, they're going to be, asking you to like go to Disneyland, and then you got to eat that shitty food there, and they're most likely not going to be prepping their food, or, maybe eating just meat options when they're out and about, which is an easy thing anyone can do. to keep them full and also not gaining weight, et cetera, et cetera. So kind of that saying, you are the sum of your five friends. So if your five friends or five people you hang out with most are just very unhealthy, then don't be surprised that you're going to be that way as well. That's just kind of because the central nervous system tends to mimic and mirror what it's around for survival. That's just what's most likely you're going to end up as well. That's just very common, basic sense. Another issue that I see, what people do is they kind of nest in particular environments. This goes hand in hand with the friends and family and continuing to stay in the environments. But they kind of, like, for example, know their job is unsustainable. It doesn't really, mirror their core values very well, but they, instead of like using it as a springboard to move on to the next step or stage in their life, they kind of begin to nest in there and usually create various mental scripts and dialogues to justify it in some way or another. Like, oh, I feel very overworked at my job or something like that. But I have this great health insurance. The irony with that statement, I hear it so often. It's like, dude, you oftentimes, first of all, that health insurance, all it gets you is a bunch of pills and unnecessary surgeries for the most part. And unfortunately, if those are taken without doing all of the other steps of basically actually living like a human being, it literally does nothing but just prolong your suffering and also just throw your biology way off, because a lot of these chemicals are very concentrated, these pharmaceuticals. And all of the systems in the human body, about 12 of them, are all interconnected, So when you start tinkering and messing with one system, it inevitably has a cascade effect on all the systems. And it's super silly to presume it doesn't, And again, the bigger thing is, it's like, dude, it's like, come on. Americans are more medically drugged out than ever, but yet the sickest they've ever been. Let's kind of just have an honest discussion about that so we can progress in the right direction as a healthcare industry. But anyways, these people continue to nest in those environments and create scripts, and also, unfortunately, create a lot of financial debt for themselves. Americans have, I found, like a super nasty habit of, like, whenever they make money, they increase their expenses, so they're always perpetually kind of broke. Where inevitably, nothing's wrong with making money. Please do, but please stop increasing your expenses. And that way, putting yourself under constant financial stress, because your body does not deal well with micro stressors, those financial stressors that you're constantly dealing with, being in traffic. Your job, if you want to optimize your health, should be to figure out a way to, everyone is so different. It's hard to have this discussion, but I think the majority of people would benefit from having a lot more autonomy in life, a lot more say over when they do and don't want to work, which goes hand in hand with autonomy. And just being in more sustainable and peaceful environments, which are going to be very, very hard to find in a lot of work environments. I'm not saying they don't exist, but it's going to be very, very difficult, because inevitably, this is a long conversation. I should probably just do a podcast on it altogether, but inevitably, just a lot of the people you're going to be working with are not going to be very health conscious, and they're going to be bringing a lot of those problems and a lot of that negative energy to the workplace. Like I mentioned, 30% of Americans are on some type of psychiatric drug, and those are the people like you're working with, you know what I mean? So obviously you're around those people more than you are around your loved ones. So obviously that's going to have a negative effect on you, especially if you're not very squared away and very grounded in your own personal core values and your identity and stuff of that sort. It's going to definitely have a negative impact on you. And there's just so much to think about too, like, the different personalities and constantly having to shift and change between these personalities, et cetera, et cetera. So be careful with the nesting. If you're making more money, figure out a way to create more autonomy in your life and financial freedom. That way you can have more time to focus on your mental and physical health goals. Stop like buying shit. It literally provides nothing but sugar highs for you at best. I can't tell you that um, how many metabolically sick and overweight males I run into consistently that are like, I don't have money for organic food, which is like $6,000 or $7,000 a year, all organic diet all year round. But then I see them going to Europe and spending like 3 to 4 thousand, no problem, on a 2 week trip. This is like pathology normalized. This is like what I'm talking about in terms of a mind virus, some kind of belief system that distorts people's reality of legitimate core values and makes them believe like what's not important is important, and what is important is not important. Your mental and physical health, you guys, no matter of your goal, is going to be the most important thing in your life, because like no matter of what your goal is in life, like what are you going to do when you have a lot of depression, or when you develop cancer, or think about like when you had the flu, like a really bad cold. Like what were you able to do except lay in bed and be miserable? That's a good example of what happens to your life when you are sick, when you don't have your physical and mental health anymore. And a lot of people take it for granted because, again, American propaganda has done an amazing job at brainwashing Americans to really believe, like genuinely believe and not question at all, that being overweight and all these medical drugs is normal. It's not normal at all. It's 100% not normal. It's like pathology 101. And that, buying all this shit, like I can't even barely sustain myself at work or whatever, but I'm going to buy this house now because it's the thing to do. And now I'm in more debt than ever and can't leave, etc., etc. It's like so silly. So silly and so sad to see. Okay. The next thing is, it kind of goes hand in hand with the nesting, but reframing. I see this often, reframing the negative into the positive. So I see this like so much. And when I finished my second book, The Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide, I was giving a lot of grocery store tours at a local Whole Foods, teaching people about all the labels and American agriculture, so they can make more conscious decisions of what they're eating and stuff of that sort. And from time to time, I would get like a person that's like one time there was a person that was like, I don't know, 35-year-old male, and he was like very overweight. He was on 2 medical drugs and had bad knee pain. And he was like, oh, I've been eating this processed food and factory farm food or whatever for so long, and I'm completely fine, So this is like a perfect example of where positive psychology actually hurts the person. And I see positive psychology actually hurting more people than helping oftentimes, okay, in their health journey. Because, yeah, I mean, the guy's clearly obese, on medical drugs and in pain. Still like a very young guy. But to him, he's doing just fine because probably the guy next to him in his office is even more overweight, on even more medical drugs. And this is one of the problems too in our society, that pathology has been normalized so much. Again, even our health professionals are all like medically drugged out, and all like pretty much all of them are overweight, and you can see looking many, many years older than they actually are, and stuff of that sort. And dude, it's like totally normal. Like no one's questioning this, which is crazy. In 2025. Like no one is questioning this. It's like business as usual. But one thing that keeps people stuck is kind of positive psychology, I feel. Because people start like reframing the negative into the positive. Oh yeah, like I'm 20 pounds overweight, but it's not that bad. At least I'm not 40 pounds overweight. Oh, I'm on like 1 antidepressant, but this other guy's like on 5, so it's not that bad. Stuff of this sort. You can build stories upon stories upon stories upon stories. And people do it all the time because oftentimes it provides short-term relief for people, because inevitably sometimes honest change could be super stressful, and that's hard for a lot of people to deal with. Although honestly, living this way, it's much harder, I would say, in the grand scheme of things to deal with, trust me. that's why they kind of create these positive reframes, you know what I mean? But positive psychology just keeps people stuck oftentimes in progressing into the right direction. And again, it's used kind of like as a scapegoat because it helps you avoid taking stressful action possibly in the moment, but inevitably that's what needs to happen to really create the change the person is desiring, you know? And it sucks when I see people doing this because it's kind of like quicksand, and once they start doing it, it's like they sink deeper and deeper, and by the time they're like 40 or 50, I mean, they're pretty much, for the most part, doomed unless they have like a huge life emergency. Like I told you about that 70-year-old guy I was talking to in the health profession on top of that for his whole career, but still like obese on a whole bunch of medical drugs at 70, dude. Come on. That's crazy. That's super crazy. Okay. Another issue is a lot of people just that keep people stuck is they have no clarity in their own core values. There's a really good book that I keep referencing called The Crowd by Gustavo Le Bon. It's one of my favorite books. It's very, very short. You guys can read it. It's very entertaining, I feel. And it talks about crowd psychology. But one of the chapters, it talks about just how lack of clarity in core values people have, how their personality is quite hollow. So he made an example. It's been many, many years since I've read this book, but he made a good example of like when a person says like, I believe ABC, whatever it may be. Ask them like, oh, why is that? And you will see they'll have an answer for you. Oh, it's because, you know, blah, blah, blah. Once they're done explaining themselves, and don't interrupt, of course, ask them, oh, why is that? You know, why do you believe that? The second layer of it. And you will see that most people go blank and oftentimes just say, that's just how it is, which shows the example of like basically people are just mirroring their environments and not clear at all or on their own core values. You know what I mean? It resonates with them personally. So when that happens, inevitably, the chances of people getting into like the wrong relationships or the wrong occupations, et cetera, is exorbitantly high. It's very, very high. And when people get into the wrong relationships or the wrong occupations, inevitably that disconnect is felt by the central nervous system, and it creates a lot of micro stress in that central nervous system. And thus, over time, that leads to various maladaptive behaviors. Those maladaptive behaviors can take on many forms. Abusing food, eating food, you know, too much food, comfort food, stress eating, etc. In the extreme situations like drug use, or even socially acceptable things like becoming a workaholic. A lot of times that is a maladaptive behavior for people and used as a form of dissociation. So lack of core values is another big one that keeps, lack of clarity of those core values is another big one that keeps people stuck in an endless loop of normalized obesity, misery, and disease their whole entire life. So, and another topic with conjunction to the core values is basically they have distorted core values. So, like I mentioned, you know, the example with the male, like I see a lot of people, you know, they're seriously struggling with their health, and they will, like I tell them, you know, like, oh, you know, a lot of times they say like, oh, you know, like, oh, I don't have the finances to be healthy. In reality, actually being overweight takes a lot of money, time, and effort. Gargantuous amount of time, money, time, and effort. It doesn't happen overnight. You need to commit to a lot of consistent behaviors that lead to particular patterns that lead to weight gain over time. So it requires a lot of consistency actually too. And money. Processed food is very expensive if you count the amount of nutrition you get as compared to whole food. Very expensive. Eating out, you know, you're looking at about a 300% increase in price compared to that same meal you can cook at home. Plus the ingredients are pretty terrible. Like you got a lot of sauces with GMO ingredients, gargantuous amount of biocides. For sure that food is coming from industrial operations and is not healthy at all. So you got a gargantuous amount of biocides that are never tested for safety in the US before being sprayed on your food. You have all that in your food as well. Then gargantuous amount of empty calories as well. Like I don't know. I haven't been to Yard House in probably like a decade and a half already. But I remember like a salad there being 1,400 calories or something like that for like a salad. You know what I mean? And stuff of that sort. So you tell people like, oh, it's very inexpensive to be healthy. No, I don't have the money for that. But then you see them go to like a European trip, like a few weeks later. Uh, that's like $3,000, for like a 2 week trip that literally provides no value to their life in the grand scheme of things. And you see, they got in their pictures, their bellies all sticking out. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, when you're in that negative state of health and decay, like your primary focus and all of your funds should be allocated to getting out of that state. And if you don't feel that's the case, um, then you probably have been one of these people that have been brainwashed to believe what's not important is important, and what is important is not important. Because literally all you got in this life is your mind and body. That's it. You only get one, and that's it. It's literally the most important thing. No matter what you decide to do with your life, you're going to need those two things to do it. You're going to need a healthy mind, and you're going to need a healthy body, and a healthy understanding of who's observing that. That's another topic. But that's it. There's no argument about that, and there's no cutting corners around that either. So when you see, it's I don't need to explain anymore. You guys get what I'm going there. They have like distorted core values. But like I always say, sick people can't make healthy decisions, or they wouldn't be sick to begin with, obviously. So there's that part too. So distorted core values, remember, lack of clarity of core values, positive psychology keeps people stuck, nesting keeps people stuck, being surrounded by friends and family that are not health conscious keeps people stuck, staying in the same environment, having pain teachers, pain in your body, but instead of listening to that and learning from it and changing your behaviors, people take medical drugs, that keeps people stuck. And just no health education. People have no clue what healthy eating and what living like a human being is. Like, no clue. And it's so embarrassing when you hear people like try to say like, oh yeah, I eat healthy and stuff of that sort. It's like, it's so lost. It's kind of like, almost like every time you hear someone say that, you already know the conversation is not going to go in a good direction. Okay, yeah. So the next thing is, again, continuing to fund their obesity, misery, and disease. So, like a 2,000 calorie a day, all organic diet all year round is about like $6,000 to $7,000 a year, depending on what items you decide to purchase. Okay, and a health course is like 300 to $1,000. Like 300 if it's online, like $1,000 if it's in person, like a weekend health, like metabolic health course. A mentor, they can vary, like 2,000 to 5,000 for like a 6 to 8 month program, something around that sort. All these things, there could be a lot more that a person can do, but all these things can help a person get out of a life of obesity, misery, and disease. But people don't spend their money on that. They spend their money on, eight to $16,000 a year on non-essential expenses every single year. Such as going out, their little trips, stuff that provides like literally no value to the person's life whatsoever in the grand scheme of things, but costs a tremendous amount. Definitely not anything lower than 8,000 a year. I've never seen anything ever be lower than 8,000 a year. Usually on average it's around 12,000 a year, which is 1,000 a month. 1,000 a month spent on complete bullshit. But then these same people that struggle with normalized obesity, misery, and disease will turn around and with a straight face tell you they don't have enough money for organic food. So 1,000 a month, to give you guys an idea, let me see here. Let's see. Okay. So let's say organic food per year is 7,000 total. Okay, so it looks like if it's 7,000 for all organic diet per year, it's $583 per month. Okay, and a lot of people say, "Oh, that's too expensive." Well, I mean, the average person is spending 1,000 a month on bullshit like eating out, subscription services, alcohol, stupid little trips here and there. And it's fine if you can do it all, but if you had only enough money to kind of take care of your health or go on these little trips and stuff of that sort, dude, you should be taking care of your health. It is not normal to be taking a shitload of medical drugs and be extremely overweight. That is not normal at all, and it is not benefiting you at all. I hate to be the one that says it, but we need to, again, start having an honest discussion that, hey, this is like total mental and physical pathology normalized to the nth degree, and we got to change. We got to change as a country, okay? So, okay, let's see. I'll list like two more things. There's really endless amount of things that keep people stuck, but these things are for sure legit. Spending a lot of time too on just like to optimize your physical and mental health, you need about 10 hours a week. You need honestly like even 4 is a little overkill sometimes, but to optimize your goal for an average human being, you need like 4 tough workouts a week. And I would even argue like maybe 2 of them need to be tough and 2 of them need to be kind of moderate intensity, not even that tough. Combined with a diet that's specifically customized to you and, okay, sleep and stuff of that sort. So really it takes about, 10 hours a week to really optimize your mental and physical health for most people. And a lot of people say they don't have time for that. And they do, but again, it's a distortion. It's this mind virus that makes up these silly scripts that have that are completely delusional and out of touch with reality. I know you have a lot of time because right now, check your phone, check your settings, and see how much time last week you spent on social media. I guarantee you, for most of you, you will see 15 to 20 hours. 15 to 20 hours watching fake people online, basically. Imagine what you could do with your life if you spent 15 or 20 of those hours just resting more, maybe reading more books, attending to your hobbies, working out more and stuff of that sort, instead of watching these super narcissistic and fake people online. So, okay. Let's see. Yeah, easier topic here. I'll just cover like 3 more really quick. But yeah, I mean, the one bigger issue that keeps people stuck oftentimes is they're just like not meeting the problem at the level of the problem, and they don't know how to do that. So with people with weight challenges, the symptoms manifest themselves at the biological level for sure, and that's people with various metabolic health challenges like high blood glucose levels, blood pressure, triglycerides, etc., etc. Those symptoms are at the biological level as well, so people tend to focus on those. But really, the problem most oftentimes is a mind virus, so it's a problem at the thinking and emotional dimension, and oftentimes also a problem with their current surroundings or environment to a degree as well, I found. So it needs to be attended there, but people don't do that. They just attend to the biological level. Thus, they're in the symptom management game. And they think they can solve one problem at one level with another level, which never works. And once you get into the symptom management game, it never stops because managing symptoms only yields more symptoms over time. And that's it. There's no exception. Unless you accidentally, miraculously, that symptom happen to be at the proper level, et cetera, et cetera. Another issue is in America, unfortunately, at the national level, looking at it kind of like a macro scale here, you're oftentimes indirectly brainwashed or brought up to believe like, be like everyone else, but better. I don't know where I got that quote from. It's not mine, but you're like, be like everyone else, but better. But hey, if everyone else is full of obesity, misery, and disease, how would being a better version of that lead to anything positive in your life? I guarantee you it almost never will. And right now, 9 out of 10 Americans are metabolically sick, more medically drugged out than ever. Even our health professionals are a disaster. Don't believe me, go to any health convention and you will see I am right, et cetera, et cetera. So being like everyone else but better is probably not a good thing in this environment. That for sure will be freaking disastrous. I personally see what everyone else is doing and do like the complete opposite. So far it's been working pretty well, but we'll see what time will tell, Okay. And the last thing I'm going to touch on here to kind of close the loop is I think it all starts, once again, the foundational level is a distortion in core values. And a lot of times a distortion in core values is a symptom of just lack of clarity of who one is. So this topic is off to you to explore yourself. You know, there are a lot of theories around this. The theory that I tend to side with, and that's worked for me, is something I got from my former professor, Dr. Donald Hoffman, and also for the most part, like Stefan Walensky. And a lot of times it's like the central nervous system, you know, between the ages of like 6 months and 12 months, you know, the baby really doesn't have an identity. And I'm just going to cut this short because I'm going to try to go hang out with the parents here on the weekend. But the baby really doesn't have an identity. And for the central nervous system to get you to survive better in the external world, it starts developing that identity around, you know, age of 6 months to 12 months or so. And it does that first by mirroring your parents and then your closer environment and then your school environment, your friend environment, work environment, et cetera, okay? And inevitably you know, this is just a theory, but what the central nervous system does is inevitably, you know, there are like 9 different distinct personality types, and typically actually everyone is all 9 of them, but to varying degrees, where a person heavily leans typically on one personality trait and kind of uses those other personality traits to somehow facilitate that one personality trait. And each personality trait has an inherent built-in fear mechanism. And like, for example, like the type 3 personality, right? Its inherent built-in fear is I am worthless, you know? So obviously, if you really believe that's true, that's dreadful, you know what I mean? It's scary, et cetera, et cetera. So inevitably that personality type uses that greatest fear to basically motivate and initiate all of the person's actions throughout their life to avoid that. So to avoid the fear of I am worthless, the person tries to prove their worth their entire life. You know what I mean? So and it depends on their social circles too. If they're in academic circles, they'll typically, you know, strive for more academic accomplishments. If they're in military circles, they'll strive for more military accomplishments, on and on. Financial circles, more financial accomplishments. Stuff of this sort. But inevitably, the issue is, the big issue is I am worthless is kind of like a false conclusion, you know? And you can't come up with the right answer from a false conclusion, you know? So it leads people to this endless loops of climbing the ladder, sometimes with a lot of intensity and effort, but the ladder is leaning against the wrong building. So it doesn't really matter how fast or high you climb. And in fact, the more people tend to accomplish, the more inevitably, inherently they feel worthless. Although what keeps them going is you get these kind of sugar highs of success. You know, you accomplish something, you do feel a sense of worth, and then a few months or a few years passes, you're again back to feeling worthless, you know, because it's kind of the motivation is inclined or initiated with a false assumption, basically, you know. So you're given the wrong directions to begin with. And thus you're never going to get to the right destination, right? And if a person is not clear on this, then they will be led into the wrong core values, you know, so they'll think they're valuing things that are really theirs, but it's not theirs. And thus that will lead them into the wrong jobs, into the wrong relationships. And thus that will lead them into maladaptive behavior, poor lifestyle and nutritional choices, which will lead them to excess weight gain, which will lead them to poor metabolic health, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, high resting blood glucose levels to the point of where they get type 2 diabetes, high body fat percentage, which inevitably could lead to various joint issues as well. On and on and on. Cancer formation increases, chances of getting all cancers increase as well, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really the big foundational issue that keeps people stuck, is lack of clarity of who they even are. And if you don't know who you are, like, what do you know? You know, like, what can you possibly know in terms of what's best for you personally, you know? So there are so many more topics to cover, guys, but I need to get going here. But those are some of the big players that keep people stuck literally their entire life. Like I told you about that 70-year-old, you know, I see it all the time, and it's so sad because oftentimes it's quite easy to be conscious of these variables and take appropriate action in a lot of circumstances. Sometimes it could be a difficult thing to change. But again, The culture has normalized pathology, medical drug use and dependence and needle pushing, this and that. And hey, we're the sickest we've ever been. So good job. Let's just kind of keep doing that and we'll see where that goes then. I'm not going to keep doing that. And I hope you guys will wake up one day too and see the idiocy in that because it's not benefiting you at all, or your loved ones, or anyone at the end of the day, okay? All right, guys, wishing you all the best and have a great weekend, okay?